was unaware that there was constant conflict with neighboring states that didn't want Israel to exist. At age 4, I didn't understand why my father had to dress up in a uniform and go out to the road, machine gun in hand, to hitch a ride for what I later learned were the front lines. Israel is such a small country that you could literally get into a taxi or hitch a ride and be at the front lines of a war zone within an hour or two. My childhood was happy as I remember it. Once I got older, I would learn how difficult those early years were for my family, but as a child I did not know what I was missing. We didn't own a television. I had never seen or heard of TV. We didn't have a bathroom. We had to go to the outhouse. I had never heard of Kleenex or tissues or the idea that you could use something once and then throw it away. We didn't even have toilet paper. We used rags that my mother would cut from a larger piece of cloth we no longer used. Those rags were used to blow our noses, to clean things, and yes, to wipe our behinds. And then my mother would wash those rags and reuse them again and again. She never threw anything away. And maybe that explains why, to this day, I will wear a shirt or a pair of jeans until it tears and falls off me. By the time I was old enough to start going to public school in Israel, my father had left us. I didn't understand it at the time, but my mother was with me, and it seemed she was all I needed. One day, we received a care package, C-A-R-E, Cooperative for American Relief Everywhere, was an organization that sent food and goods to people in underdeveloped countries. To my knowledge, we had never received mail of any kind, much less a big box addressed to my mother. We tore open the box, and inside we found things I had never seen before. There was a sweater. It was too big for me, but nonetheless, I wore it every day proudly. It had holes in it, and my mother would occasionally sew the holes back up. There was also a big can of peaches. I had never seen or heard of peaches. In Israel, we had cactus fruit that grew on the hill behind our small one-bedroom home, which was riddled with scars from artillery fire from neighboring countries. We didn't have a can opener, so my mother used a big rock to punch a hole on one side of the can. Once she'd opened the can, she offered me a swig of nectar. To this day, I vividly recall it as the sweetest taste I had ever experienced. It was thick and seemingly unnatural. Fruit didn't taste like that, and neither did cake, the few times we'd had any. And perhaps my first experience with that can of peaches explains why I have an insatiable sweet tooth to this day. There was also a Bugs Bunny book where Elmer Fudd was constantly chasing the rabbit. I had never heard of Bugs and didn't recall much of the book until we emigrated to America, and I started seeing Bugs Bunny cartoons on television. Because my mother couldn't read or speak English at the time, she would just look at the pictures in the book and tell me a story as if she were reading from those pages. On many nights, I would sometimes wonder why the story in the book kept changing. There were other wonders in that care package, too. I'll never forget it. Somewhere out there was a kind, anonymous stranger who'd sent the box to us. My takeaway from that experience is that we all must give back. We must. My story and my mother's story are not the only tales of heartache and poverty. It continues today. So much of the world trudges on in the same conditions or worse, as wars are being fought for nothing because of hatred, racism, and tribalism. And children continue to go to sleep hungry, and that's partly why I've always been so driven. I've always wanted power, but not so much for myself.